Hey guys, welcome back to Calibrate Tools, and today we're going to talk about how to use a sheet sander. Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to give you a brief history of handheld sanders, and using this model, show you some of the basic features of a sheet palm sander and how to use them. Now, electric sanders have been around for about 90 years, and you can only imagine how big the first one was. Obviously, it was bigger than this one. And over time, as improvements were made, it got pretty small. Before, you had to bring the work to the sander, and now you can bring the sander to the work. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with Orbital Sanders, and those are the sanders with the round pads, right? But the thing about Orbital Sanders, though they're great, they're hard to get into corners with. With this one, the square pad allows you to get into corners much easier. Now, if you're into carpentry, woodworking, or you're going to do a paint job around the house, you want to make sure that the surface that you're going to apply the paint to is smooth with no imperfections that will mar the finished product. And the way to achieve this smooth surface is by using sandpaper. But how many of you guys, honestly, are looking forward to sanding all four walls of a room by hand? My guess is not that many. Now, I know I need to work out my arms more, but sanding a room isn't necessarily the go-to arm workout routine that I envision. So, one of my favorite tools to use for sanding is called a sheet sander. Now, sheet sanders are also called palm sanders or finishing sanders. They're called palm sanders because, you can put them in the palm of your hand and apply it to a surface like that. They're meant to be used with quarter sheets of sandpaper. So if you cut a sheet of paper into 4 quarters, that's pretty much the size of the sandpaper you're going to use with the sheet sander. And we'll get into the type of sandpaper you need to use for your project, whether it's 120 grit or 220 grit or whatever. We'll talk about that in another video, so stay tuned. Now, as I always say, when working with any power tool, you want to make sure you turn it off first and unplug it before you install any attachments or accessories to it or make any adjustments, because you don't want to get on the bad side of electricity, if you know what I mean. Now, before you attach your sandpaper to your sheet sander, it's instructed that you run the sandpaper over a 90-degree angle, like the edge of a table, to soften the sandpaper and make it easier to install into the sander, like this. Now, the sheet sander has these clamps on the front side of the sander and on the rear side of the sander, if you can see that. And the way you open up those clamps is through these clamp levers, which are on the either side of the sander. One here and one here. So you pull these up, for example, and you see by pushing them down, it opens up the front clamp, and the same for the back clamp. Then you want to take the short edge of your sandpaper and place it under the open clamp like this. But you don't want to push it all the way in, because that won't leave enough sandpaper for the other clamp to grip. So you just want to place about that much in. Not all the way in. Don't push it all the way in. But just about this much in for the clamp to grip the edge of the paper. Now, once you have the sandpaper under the clamp, you want to take the lever and pull it up. This depresses the clamp onto the sandpaper. Then press the lever towards the sander, then down into this tab here to keep it in place. And this locks the sandpaper onto the sander. Then you just wrap it around or under, and you do the other side. You want to make sure you pull it nice and tight. Then place the other edge of the sandpaper under the rear clamp. Pull the lever back, press it in, push it down to lock it in place. And now you're ready for sanding. Now, nobody wants to inhale a lung full of dust. Unfortunately, this model comes with a dust collection feature. And the way that works is they provide a hole punch. The hole punch creates holes in the sandpaper that suck up the dust into the sander as you sand and distribute them to the dust bag. Here's how it works. You take the hole punch, you place it onto the sandpaper, and you simply press down like that. Then you take off the hole punch, and there you go. You have 8 holes to suck up the dust as you go. Now the dust bag is pretty self-explanatory. You simply twist it here anti-clockwise, remove it, empty your dust, and place it back on, twist it clockwise, and there you go. It's also recommended that you empty the dust bag after every 10 minutes of sanding. Okay, let's talk about some sanding technique. Remember, number one thing is safety first. So you want to get some safety glasses and maybe some gloves as well. Okay, I know this is not mentioned much, but you want to inspect the surface that you're going to sand, whether it's a wall, a piece of wood, or whatever. Because a lot of times you don't notice that there may be a nail or a head of a nail sticking out of the wood or a staple that was left in there. And if you run your sander over that, that could be pretty damaging to the sander and possibly to you. That's why it's always good to be safe and go over the surface first, and make sure those things aren't there. Okay, it's important to remember that when you're using a sheet sander, you don't want to move it in a circular motion. You want to move it in a back and forth motion like this. Now you want to turn on your unit before you touch the surface that you're going to sand. Then as soon as you touch the surface that you're going to sand, you start moving it forward and backward immediately. Now, when you're sanding wood, you want to stay with the grain. For instance, this table right here, the grain is running this way, so you want to stay with it. Now, for a finer finish, you may want to cross the grain at times, but remember to get back where the majority of the grain is running. Another important point to remember is that when you're sanding, you don't want to apply too much pressure. You don't want to press it down on the surface while you're sanding. You just want to apply just enough pressure to the surface and let the sander do the rest of the work. Okay, as far as cleaning this baby, you want to blow it out with clean, dry air at least once a week in these vents right here, or wherever you can. Just remove the sandpaper and blow everything out at least once a week up in here in the vents and all that good stuff, so you can have a working unit that'll last you a long time. Now, I've been working on a lot of projects lately, and I found the sander to be one of the most useful and enjoyable tools that I have in my arsenal. And I suggest that you go out there and get you one. If you're into carpentry, woodworking, home decor, or home improvement, this is an indispensable tool you have to have. Guaranteed. This is worth its weight in gold, okay? Now today, we went over sander basics, okay? We discussed the history of the sander. We discussed how to install the sandpaper on the sander, how to empty the sander, how to use the sander, okay? So hopefully you got something from this video and you learned a lot today. Hey guys, if you like what you saw today and you learned something, hit that like and subscribe button so we can get more of this good content out to you. And I'll see you in the next video.